3 nights ago, I heard something dragging across my street, slow, deliberate. When I looked out my window, a man with a closed umbrella was staring straight at me. Every night, he came closer. No one knows who he is, but he left marks on my door, 3 of them. This morning, I found a 4th carved into my driveway. He hasn't come back yet, but I think the next time he does, he'll already be inside. Not a thud, not a knock, more like a slow dragging, as if something heavy grazed the asphalt. I was sitting on my couch, the television low, when it cut through the silence between commercials. At first I ignored it, assuming it was just our elderly neighbor, Mr. Halvorsen, taking another nighttime walk. But the sound didn't move steadily. It would drag, then stop. Drag, then stop. Like whatever made it kept pausing right outside each house. I muted the TV. The room went still. There it was again, closer this time. A long, gritty scrape against pavement. For reasons I still don't understand, a chill worked its way up my spine. I got up, walked slowly to the window, and drew the curtain back an inch. The street was dimly lit by the tall lamp at the corner, its light buzzing faintly. Everything looked normal at first. Then I saw him. A man stood in the middle of the street, directly across from my house. Tall, slim, with a dark overcoat that swayed gently though there was no wind. In his right hand he held an umbrella, closed, the tip resting against the ground. That must have been the noise I heard. He had dragged it all the way down the street. But the umbrella wasn't what froze me. He was staring straight at my window. Not casually. Not with curiosity. He stared with the intensity of someone trying to see through the glass, into the dark behind me. For a long moment, neither of us moved. I felt trapped between fight-or-flight impulses, though something told me that stepping away from the window would be the greater danger. I couldn't see his face clearly, the shadow of the street lamp fell across it. But I swear to you, even from behind that curtain, I felt the weight of his eyes. I checked the time, midnight. Who stands outside someone's home at that hour? Why stare at a stranger's window? Why drag an umbrella instead of carrying it? I closed the curtain as quietly as I could. My heart thudded. When I looked again, only seconds later, the man was gone. Vanished, not down the street, not toward the intersection. Just, gone. The next morning, I walked outside expecting to find footprints, marks, anything. But the street looked untouched. If I hadn't known better, I would have convinced myself it was just a dream brought on by too much caffeine and too little sleep. Except it wasn't. Because that night, the noise returned. And this time, he came closer. The second night began with a silence so complete it felt staged, like the world was holding its breath. I kept telling myself I wouldn't look out the window again. That acknowledging whatever I'd seen would somehow invite it back. But fear has a way of turning curiosity into compulsion. I sat on the couch again, lights dimmed, trying to lose myself in anything, news reruns, old sitcoms, the dull hum of the fridge. But nothing worked. My mind kept circling back to the man with the umbrella. As the clock crept toward midnight, I felt myself listening for the sound I dreaded. Then it came. A slow, gravelly scrape. Much closer this time. My heart flipped. I muted the television again, hands trembling slightly. My living room felt smaller, the shadows sharper. The scraping continued, drag, pause, until it reached my driveway. I don't know why I stood up. I should have stayed seated, pretended I heard nothing. But something deep inside me insisted, you need to know where he is. I crept to the window and parted the curtain just barely. He stood at the end of my driveway. Closer than the night before. Much closer. The street lamp illuminated him just enough for me to make out his silhouette. He still wore the same overcoat, the same closed umbrella dragging along the pavement. But now I could see a small detail I hadn't noticed before: the umbrella's tip was worn down, metal exposed, as if he'd been dragging it for miles. He didn't move. Didn't shift his weight. Didn't tilt his head. Just stood there, umbrella in hand, facing my house. Staring. I pulled the curtain back in panic and stumbled away from the window, my breath shallow. My brain fought itself: call the police, don't call the police, maybe he's harmless, maybe he's not real, maybe I'm losing it. But no, everything about him felt purposeful. I didn't sleep that night. When morning finally came, I stepped outside, half expecting to find footprints, scuff marks, something. This time I did find something, but not on the street. On my driveway, directly in front of my house, was a faint line carved into the concrete. A thin groove etched in a perfect arc, as if the umbrella's metal tip had been pressed down harder this time. As if he had stopped right there and turned slowly. And then I noticed something else. My neighbor, Clara, was outside watering her plants. When she saw me staring at the groove, she frowned. "Rough night?" she asked. "You didn't hear anything?" I asked her. "No weird noises?" "No, man out here?" She shook her head. "I was up late. Nothing unusual." Then she added, "What man?" I described him. Her face drained of color. "What's wrong?" I asked her. She swallowed hard. "I saw someone like that once," she whispered. "Years ago. My sister lived on the other side of town. She told me about a man with an umbrella who stared into her windows at night." My blood turned cold. "What happened to her?" I asked. Clara paused. Looked down. Spoke barely above a murmur. She moved away. But before she did, she said the man got closer every night. I asked her what she meant, how close. But Clara didn't answer. She excused herself and went back inside, leaving the watering can lying sideways in the grass. That evening, I locked every door. Closed every curtain. Told myself I would not look outside. But as midnight approached, the scraping returned. Only this time, it wasn't coming from the street. It was coming from the walkway leading directly to my front door. I have replayed that night so many times that the memory feels carved into me the same way the umbrella's metal tip carved into my driveway. The third night didn't just frighten me. It changed something fundamental in me. The scraping sound began earlier, long before midnight. At first it was distant, faint enough that I could pretend it was branches scraping against each other in the wind. But there was no wind. Drag, pause. Drag, pause. Each repetition was deliberate. Measured. Growing louder. I stood in the hallway facing my front door, every muscle in my body tense. I tried to convince myself not to look through the peephole. But that little circle of glass felt like the only barrier between me and whatever waited outside. The scraping stopped. Silence. For a long moment, all I heard was my own breathing. I felt the floor vibrating slightly beneath my feet, as if something heavy rested on the other side of the door. I leaned forward. Slowly. Very slowly. When I looked through the peephole, I expected darkness or emptiness. But instead, I saw him. The umbrella man stood less than an arm's length away. This time, he was close enough for me to see part of his face, grayish skin, too smooth, too still, framed by hair that looked soaked though the night had been dry. His eyes were what froze me, though. They were fixed directly on the peephole, as if he had been waiting for me to look, as if he somehow knew I would. He lifted the umbrella. Not to open it, but to raise the metal tip. He pressed it against my front door. I stepped back in instinctual terror. The metal scraped slowly down the wood, carving a straight line into it. A long, dragging stroke. Then another. And another. Each stroke deliberate. Careful. A message, though I didn't understand it. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped my phone as I dialed emergency services. The operator answered. I tried to explain. Tried to describe the man. Tried to make sense of the fear choking my words. She told me to stay inside, stay calm, stay on the line. But then she said something that made my blood run cold. There are no patrol cars immediately available in your district right now. I'll stay with you until one frees up. I told her I couldn't wait. Something was wrong. Something was dangerous. But even as I spoke, the scraping stopped. Silence again. I forced myself to look through the peephole a second time. He was gone. Not walking away. Not fading into the distance. Just gone. The umbrella man vanished as abruptly as he had appeared. The operator kept talking, but her voice was distant, foggy. I barely remember ending the call. I barely remember sitting on the floor until the sun rose. What I do remember, clear as crystal, is the mark he left on my front door. 3 perfectly straight, parallel scratches. Not wide. Not deep. But unmistakable. Like tally marks. Like a count. A countdown. I don't know what happens after the 3rd night. I don't know what the marks mean. I don't know why he chose me. But last night, when I stepped out to bring in the mail, I noticed something new carved into the concrete at the edge of my driveway. A 4th line. Fresh. He hasn't come back yet. But he will. And the next time he does I think he'll be inside.